Well, a newly agreed on budget is set to be tabled on the 12th of March. This comes after Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana yesterday postponed the tabling of the budget. Cabinet ministers failed to reach an agreement about various funding mechanisms and a proposed 2% VAT increase, which would have hiked the VAT rate to 17%. Godongwana says Cabinet is due to hold further discussions in order to reach consensus so that the budget can now be tabled on the 12th of March. The decision to postpone angered several political parties in Parliament. For some of the reaction to these developments, we are joined by Business Unity South Africa CEO Khulekani Mathe. Khulekani, thank you for joining us. Thanks for being with us this morning. Never before since 1994 has the budget been rejected like what we saw happening yesterday. What is Busa's reaction to all of this?
Good morning, Leanne, and indeed, this was the first since 1994 that we've had postponement of the budget the way that it happened yesterday. Of course, what happened behind the scenes in terms of the events that led to the postponement, we're not privy to. But we do know that there was no agreement on certain parts or certain proposals in the budget, which then led to the postponement. We are disappointed that it had to get to this point because the process of making the budget is actually a very, very long one. It starts way before the minister makes the medium-term budget policy statement, which in this case was on the 30th of October, and continues. And so it should have been foreseen that there were areas of disagreement and then a lot more work done to prevent this happening. And for the postponement to take place on the 13th hour, frankly, because it was after the time that it was supposed to be tabled, is disappointing.
Yeah. Take us into the behind-the-scenes working of all of this, because I think this is perhaps maybe an area that we need more clarity. I mean, we've never normally needed something like that, but now that we've seen it unfold, I mean, when the budget is tabled, I mean, when it's done, does the minister sit solely by himself and put this together? Is nobody at all aware of what is contained in that budget address until that moment before, where obviously people go into lockup and then they get sight of this? Is there no consultations with other parties involved in this at all?
Well, Leanne, it is a while since I was last in government, but I don't expect things to have changed too much. What happens is that very early in the year preceding the budget, the technical work starts where departments are asked to submit to National Treasury their proposed budget for the following year. Those are tabled, and committees, functional committees, in other words, committees that look after each function, will then work through that, and it works all the way up in terms of technical committees to what is called the medium-term expenditure committee, which then makes recommendations to a committee made up of ministers. It's called the Ministers' Committee on the Budget. It's not all ministers, but it is made up of several ministers who in turn will consider what is proposed put before them and will brief cabinet at different points leading up to what is then gets finalized into the final budget. So there was plenty of opportunity for everybody to see that things were not perhaps as smooth as they should be, and to then put in corrective measures in place. Yeah. Of course, the Treasury holds the pen in terms of the last statement that is released, because you can understand that some information in the budget is really sensitive, so it can't be circulated freely. But there is an understanding that the Treasury will do that. But as I've said, if there were really major areas of difference, those should have been picked up early and ironed out.
So is there a possibility that the minister kept that very close to his chest, that 2 percentage point increase in VAT, that truly people only got sight of at that late hour, that it had to literally be postponed minutes before it was meant to be delivered? Is there a possibility that was the first time a lot of people saw that?
If I commented on that, I would only be speculating, Leanne, and I would rather not do that. But I just want to say that, well, this is a lesson. It should be a lesson of how to construct budgets in an environment where the power is shared, right? And so to make sure that we do not have a repeat of these kinds of developments.
Indeed, and I respect you for not commenting, because anything now is speculation, because it's the first time we've been in a government of national unity like this, where there are parties that need to be privy to a lot of this information and make these decisions. Let's not talk, however, about this main point of contention, because this whole issue of a 2 percentage point VAT increase, I mean, South Africa's economy hasn't grown since 2013, and that is the reality, and people are struggling on the ground. One of the conversations I had in the previous hour was saying that, this just shows how out of touch government is with the people on the ground, because literally this will affect the poorest of the poor. Do you think that this is the only mechanism that the department could come up with to try and rectify this big deficit in funding?
I have huge sympathy for the National Treasury on this point, because we have known over many years that we have a government that is really keen to spend. So cutting spending is not really in the DNA of our government. So when people sit together, the hard decisions about cutting are never the easiest ones. And so the National Treasury is squeezed to make more resources available in an economy that is not growing. And so the option that was left to the National Treasury, short of blowing our deficit, was to raise the taxes. That said, Leanne, raising taxes, that in this case by 2%, have not been done in the last 30-odd years. And so it would have a huge negative impact on the economy. And it just shows you how desperate the situation was for the National Treasury, and in this case, the Minister of Finance, who understand very well these kinds of issues that I'm raising, to resort to that. And again, I don't think the National Treasury should show the blame alone. I think all of government should really look hard in the mirror and say, how did we end up in this position? It's clear. It's because there is no will to make trade-offs and to take hard decisions about spending so that we stay within the budget that we have. We do not exceed the budget. If we want to spend more, committing to those programs that are growth enhancing so that we can generate more resources to fund the programs of government.
All right, we got to leave it there. I know there was so much more I wanted to speak to you about, but we have got more reaction a bit later on this hour as well. So we'll get Busisiwe Mavuso, Business Leadership South Africa, to also weigh in the conversation. But Khulekani, thank you. Thanks for giving us a little bit from the reaction of Business Unity South Africa. He, of course, is the CEO, and his reaction to the budget speech postponement.